100 is too big and 97 is too small. You need a 98 square inch head, but which one are you going to buy? Here are my top 5, and I'm going to help you choose the next racket for you. So, for those of you who aren't tennis racket aficionados, a very quick lesson before we get started. Lots of brands and most rackets now come in a variety of weights and head sizes. So this is the brand new Babolat Pure Strike 4th generation, and I have the Pure Strike 97, I have the Pure Strike 1619, and I have the Pure Strike 100. The same racket in 3 different head sizes. In theory, the smaller their head size, obviously the strings will come a little bit closer, you get a denser string bed, less movement on the strings, which should create more control at contact, but at the sacrifice of a little bit of spin and a little bit of power. Now, whether you prefer a 97, a 98 or 100 is all going to be personal preference. I play with 100, Joe plays with a 98. We can both use different sizes. It doesn't really change a significant amount, but if you've decided you want a 98, well, which racket is the one for you? I'm going to get started in just a moment at number 5. In at number 5, I have the Technofiber T-Fight 305. So when we have that slightly shrunken head and we have 98 square inch and we sacrifice a little bit of spin, a little bit of power, quite often the racket is designed in a way to give a little bit back again. So the 305, that extra 5 grams, is very common, and a lot of the rackets are about to come up are slightly heavier than their 100 square inch counterparts. And I just happen to really, really like the T-Fight 305. It is a hard racket to pin down in terms of exactly how it plays, what type of racket it is, because it is very, very powerful, but it has that 98 square inch control element. I think it looks great, it feels great, and there's something about it that just sort of begs you to play in a sort of fun, wild, attacking way, which is what I really like in a tennis racket. So, if you kind of player who wants a little bit of power, but without sacrificing too much sort of wildness, Technofiber T-Fight 305 is a great place to start, and it is my number 5. In at number 4, we have the Head Radical MP. Now, this is a little bit personal. The Head Radical is actually the first tennis racket I bought. Not this one of the old microgels way back when. So I've always had a bit of an affinity towards the Head Radical. And again, it is quite hard to pin down exactly what racket it is. Head themselves tell you that it is radically versatile, whatever that means. Essentially, it is just a great racket for sort of all-rounders. If you don't want to sort of pigeonhole yourself as a certain type of player, you don't want to be too powerful, too spinny, hit too flat, play too much spin, whatever it might be, the Head Radical is going to kind of give you a little bit of everything, but not push you too far in any one direction. So on our sort of tennis racket matrix of power versus control and spin, and it's going to be really, really close to the middle. So great starter racket if you're not sure at all, because you can't go wrong with a Head Radical. So my number 4, not sure about the looks of this one, excited to see their next version. At number 3, we have the Babolat Aero 98, as used by Carlos Alcaraz, and one of the very few rackets that you can actually buy as a 2-pack. Babolat have promised that rackets that come in a 2-pack like this are identical, which is a very big selling point, as many rackets are not. Now, the reason it is my number 3, and there's a bit of a story behind this one, is I really disliked this racket when I first used it. It didn't really make much sense to me having a spin frame with 98 because of that associated loss of spin with the smaller head size. However, what I think has happened is the more I've played with this, the more I've got used to it, the more I've started to enjoy it. And actually, it's not a spin frame, it is a 98 square inch racket that gives you a little bit of spin. And this is kind of the point I'm trying to get across in this video, is that 98 square inch rackets are quite hard to pin down. Because they have taken away something, they're all kind of like a version of something else, which can make them a little bit hard to get on with. It can make them a little bit hard to categorize, but persevere with them like the Aero 98 and you start to really feel and see the benefits of using them. So I can't stand the looks. I used to not stand how it played, but the more I've got on with it, the more I enjoy the 98, the Aero 98, and I have to say it is a really, really nice racket, and that is why it's my number 3. Okay, at number 2, we have the Yonex E-Zone 98. We are all big fans of Yonex here at PH Tennis. Their rackets are very, very high quality, very well made, and I happen to think that the E-Zone 98 is the best of the bunch. Main reason being is the 98 square inch head has taken some of the power away from the E-Zone and created a really, really easy to use but still very powerful tennis racket. The 100 is just a little bit too much. It's like power with more power. Whereas in the 98, that slight bit of control you get just seems to work beautifully, and it just comes across as a really, really fun, easy to use power racket. You can defend with short little punchy swings, but you can still maneuver it around and hit big and hard enough when you're attacking as well. It looks great in the black. Can't say anything more, I can't say anything negative about the E-Zone 98, except maybe no, there's nothing. It's a really, really nice racket. It's just not quite as good as number 1, which is coming up now. So, at number 1, is the blade, the Wilson Blade 1619, and that's important. There is 2 versions of the Wilson Blade. There's a 1619, which is the number of strings, 16 mains, 19 crosses. The other version has 18 mains and 20 crosses, more strings, and that's the problem. In a 98 square inch frame, which is already a little bit smaller, adding more strings to it as well, to me, just made it a little bit too dead, a little bit too controlly. Keeping it at 1619 basically opens up the blades to be this really versatile, really fun all-round racket. You get plenty of power, you get plenty of spin, whilst getting that crisp, sharp blade feel. This is by a long way my favourite This is by a long way my favourite 98 square inch head, and I think the reason for that is because it was designed to be a 98 square inch head. A lot of the other rackets are versions or edited, so they were often made to be 100 square inch, and then the brands, they want to make a 98 square inch version, and that is sort of developed over time. However, the Wilson Blade, this is the flagship, this is the boy, this is the one you want, and it just plays like that. I couldn't speak highly enough of the Wilson Blade. If I was going to play more seriously, if I was going to play at a higher level, if I wasn't coaching so much and I was competing more, this would probably be my racket. When I'm just trying to take things easy and sort of just casually play, the 100 square inch would be the go-to racket. But in terms of 98 square inch, you cannot go wrong with a Wilson Blade 1619, and that is why it is my number 1 by a very long way. So there we have it. These are my top 5 98 square inch tennis rackets. There are loads of others. You could have a Head Boom, a Head Extreme, the Prince Beast 98 is fantastic. The V-Core 98 is really, really good. There are so many options, but these happen to be my top 5. I'm sure loads of you are going to disagree. Feel free to disagree as long as you write it in the comments below. We will try and get back to you if they are interesting or particularly nice. Either way, I look forward to reading them. Thank you very much for watching. Like, share and subscribe, and stay tuned for more from PH Tennis.